The first time Oh Sun-ho flew in the combat section of Humanity's Wrath, he cried. Not from fear, but from the overwhelming beauty of what he experienced. The weapon system had grown into something that could move through space like a living creature. Parts of it could separate from the main structure and fly independently, while staying connected through quantum communication links that the Valdari technology made possible. Sun-ho sat in the pilot's chamber, his mind fully merged with the alien systems. Around him, the wall showed not just what his eyes could see, but what sensors detected across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. He could perceive radio waves, cosmic radiation, and the gravitational pulls of distant planets all at the same time. "How does it feel?" asked Dr. Ryu through the communication system. "Like being able to see with my whole body," Sun-ho replied. "I can sense Jupiter's moons from here. I can feel the solar wind flowing past Earth. It's incredible." But the wonder of the experience was soon overshadowed by urgent necessity. Space monitoring stations had lost contact with several outer system research facilities. The Devourer scouts had arrived, and they were already beginning their work. Admiral Bay gathered his command staff in the Situation Room. Large screens showed the solar system with red marks indicating where human installations had gone dark. "They've taken out the Neptune Research Station and 2 asteroid mining facilities," reported his intelligence officer. "No survivors. The facilities have been completely dismantled." Park Yuna, who had been monitoring the energy signatures of the attacks, looked grim. "They're not just destroying our installations, they're harvesting them, converting the matter into energy and raw materials." "For what purpose?" Admiral Bay asked. "To build more of themselves. Each Devourer ship can use harvested materials to construct additional units. They're growing their fleet as they advance toward the inner planets." The first direct confrontation happened near Jupiter. A Devourer harvester, roughly the size of Earth's moon, had begun consuming one of Jupiter's smaller satellites. Human space forces tried to stop it with conventional weapons. The battle was a disaster. Nuclear missiles, energy beams, and kinetic projectiles had no effect on the Devourer ship. Its hull simply absorbed the attacks and converted the energy to fuel its own systems. Within hours, humanity's entire outer system defense fleet had been destroyed. "We have to deploy Humanity's Wrath," Admiral Bay decided. "It's the only thing that might work." Oh Sun-ho and his newly trained interface team prepared for their first real combat mission. The weapon system had grown a specialized combat section that could detach from the main facility and operate independently in space. As Sun-ho connected with the system, he felt the familiar rush of expanded consciousness. But this time, there was something different. The alien technology felt angry. It had sensed the destruction of the human ships and recognized the Devourer signature from Valdari memories. "I can feel their hatred," Sun-ho reported. "The Valdari technology remembers what the Devourers did to their homeworld. It wants revenge." The combat section of Humanity's Wrath launched from Earth, accelerating to incredible speeds using propulsion, technology that humanity was only beginning to understand. Sun-ho's consciousness rode along with the weapon system, experiencing spaceflight as no human ever had before. When they reached Jupiter's orbit, Sun-ho got his first close look at a Devourer harvester. It was a nightmare made of dark metal and energy fields covered in mechanical tentacles that were stripping apart Jupiter's moon layer by layer. "Beginning engagement," Sun-ho reported. The battle that followed was unlike anything in human military history. Humanity's Wrath could change its shape and properties instantly, adapting to each attack the Devourer ship made. When the enemy fired energy beams, the human weapon became reflective. When it tried to grab the human ship with mechanical arms, Humanity's Wrath flowed like liquid and reformed elsewhere. But the Devourer ship was learning too. Each time Humanity's Wrath changed tactics, the enemy adapted its responses. The battle became a deadly dance of evolution, with both sides trying to stay ahead of their opponent's adaptations. The turning point came when Sun-ho stopped trying to fight the Devourer ship like a human would. Instead, he let his consciousness merge more deeply with the Valdari technology and began thinking like both species at once. Suddenly, he could see patterns in the Devourer's behavior, that he had missed before. The enemy ship wasn't just a machine. It was following programmed instructions that had been written millions of years ago. It was incredibly advanced, but it couldn't truly innovate. Humanity's wrath began attacking in ways that the Devourer's programming couldn't predict. The weapon system created completely new types of energy fields, combined matter in ways that the universe had never seen before, and used strategies that grew out of the fusion of human creativity and Valdari technology. The Devourer ship was destroyed in a flash of light that could be seen from Earth. But the victory came at a cost. When Sunho returned to Earth, everyone could see that he had been changed again. His skin had a faint blue tint like the color of Valdari metal. His eyes glowed softly in the dark. When he spoke, sometimes two voices seemed to come from his throat at the same time. "I'm still human," he insisted when the medical team examined him. "But I'm also something more now. During the battle, I had to merge completely with the Valdari systems to defeat the Devourer. I can't go back to being just human anymore." Dr. Ryu was deeply concerned. "Sunho, do you still care about humanity? Do you still want to protect Earth?" "More than ever," Sunho replied. "But I also understand things now that pure humans cannot understand. I can see the bigger picture. The Devourers aren't just our enemy, they're the enemy of all life in the galaxy. We have to stop them completely, or they'll just keep coming back." The victory at Jupiter gave humanity hope, but it also revealed the true scale of their challenge. Space telescopes detected hundreds more Devourer ships approaching the solar system. The main fleet was still years away, but the advanced scouts were arriving in increasing numbers. Kim Sora had been working with the expanded Valdari database that Sunho could now access through his enhanced connection. What she learned was terrifying. "The Devourers don't just destroy civilizations," she reported. "They learn from them. Every species they've encountered has made them smarter and more dangerous. They've been studying human tactics since they arrived in the outer system." This proved true in the next several battles. Each Devourer ship that humanity's wrath fought was better prepared for human tactics. They began using strategies that seemed to anticipate human responses. The battles moved closer to Earth as more Devourer ships entered the inner solar system. Mars was evacuated. The asteroid belt became a battleground. Every victory came at the cost of Sunho becoming less recognizably human. After the fifth major battle, Sunho could no longer disconnect from humanity's wrath completely. The weapon system had grown throughout Earth's underground facilities, and he had become permanently integrated with its consciousness. "I don't sleep anymore," he told Dr. Ryu during one of their conversations. "I don't need to. The Valdari parts of my mind keep working even when the human parts rest." "Are you happy?" she asked. Sunho considered the question for a long moment. "Happy is too simple a word for what I am now. I experience joy when we save human lives. I feel satisfaction when we destroy Devourer ships. But I also feel the sadness of the Valdari, mourning their lost civilization. And I feel something else. A sense of purpose that goes beyond just surviving." "What kind of purpose?" The Valdari weren't the only species that tried to build a weapon like this. Their database shows records of dozens of other attempts. But they all failed because they tried to make the weapon purely technological. We succeeded because we made it living. We made it part of us. Sunho gestured to the walls around them, which glowed softly with Valdari patterns. Humanity's wrath isn't just a weapon anymore. It's a new form of life. It's the next step in evolution for both humans and Valdari technology. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just building a weapon to defend Earth. They were creating something that could continue fighting the Devourers long after individual humans were gone. But the immediate threat was growing. Long-range sensors detected the edge of the main Devourer fleet entering the solar system. Thousands of ships, some larger than planets, were approaching Earth. "We need more pilots," Admiral Bay decided. "Sunho can't fight them all alone." The call for volunteers brought responses from around the world. Pilots, soldiers, scientists, and ordinary citizens offered to undergo the transformation process that would let them interface with humanity's wrath. The first group of new pilots included a former astronaut named Captain Quan Mina, a quantum physicist named Dr. Yang Jihye, and a software engineer named Baek Do-wan. All of them understood that volunteering meant giving up their purely human existence. The transformation process had been improved based on what they had learned from Sunho's experience. Instead of one person merging completely with the system, teams of operators could share the load, maintaining more of their individual humanity while still accessing the enhanced capabilities. But even with the improved process, each new pilot was changed by their connection to the alien technology. They could think faster, process more information, and perceive the world changed overnight when the governments announced the truth about the devourers. People panicked at first, but then something remarkable happened. Instead of falling apart, humanity came together like never before. The old borders between countries didn't matter anymore. Scientists from every nation worked side by side. Military leaders who had been enemies shook hands and began planning together. Everyone understood that this was bigger than any human conflict. Admiral Bae Tae-hyun stood in the command center that had been built deep underground, exactly on the line that separated North and South Korea. For 70 years, this border had been one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Now, it had become humanity's greatest hope. The facility was enormous. It stretched for miles in both directions, hidden beneath the mountains. Thousands of people worked here around the clock, building humanity's first galaxy-killer weapon. Status report, Admiral Bae said to his chief engineer. Choi Hyun-woo looked tired. He had been working 18-hour days for months. The main construction chamber is ready. We've successfully grown the first large-scale Valdari metal structures using the seed fragments. He pointed to a massive screen showing the construction area. In the center of a chamber the size of an aircraft hangar, something incredible was taking shape. The alien metal flowed and formed like liquid, but it was building structures stronger than any human material. It's responding to the neural interface signals better than we hoped, Hyun-woo continued. When our test operators think about what they want the metal to become, it actually listens. Park Yuna joined them at the command station. She had been promoted to head of materials research after her breakthrough with the alien technology. We've made another discovery, she said. The Valdari metal doesn't just follow human thoughts. It learns from them. She showed them a recording of the latest tests. A volunteer had been thinking about flying while connected to a small piece of the alien metal. The metal had shaped itself into something that looked like wings. But here's the amazing part, Yuna continued. When we disconnected that volunteer and connected a different person, the metal remembered the wing shape. It's building a library of human thoughts and ideas. Admiral Bae nodded grimly. How long until we can test the full-scale version? 6 months, Hyun-woo said. Maybe less, but we still need to solve the neural interface problem. That problem was being worked on by Dr. Ryu Ji-won, a quantum physicist who had joined the project 3 months earlier. She had been studying how human brains could safely connect to alien technology. The issue is compatibility, Dr. Ryu explained during the evening briefing. Human brains work differently than Valdari brains did. We use both logical thinking and emotional responses to make decisions. The Valdari were much more logical. Is that good or bad? Admiral Bae asked. It's both. The good news is that human thinking is exactly what the weapon needs. We can adapt and improvise in ways the Valdari couldn't. But the bad news is that our emotional responses can overwhelm the alien systems. Dr. Ryu showed them brain scans of volunteers who had tested the interface technology. Look at these patterns. When humans connect to the Valdari systems, both minds start changing. The human becomes more logical, but the alien technology becomes more emotional. What does that mean in practice? Hyun-woo asked. It means the weapon won't just be a tool, it will be a new kind of consciousness. Part human, part alien. Something that has never existed before. The implications were staggering. They weren't just building a weapon, they were creating a new form of life. Meanwhile, Kim Sora continued working on translating more Valdari files. She had discovered records from other species that had tried to fight the Devourers. All of them had failed. But their attempts had taught the Valdari valuable lessons. The Thanari tried to build massive space fleets, Sora reported. The Devourers destroyed them all. The Kolthek tried to hide their entire civilization underground. The Devourers found them anyway. The Kektar tried to negotiate. The Devourers don't negotiate. So what makes us think we can succeed where everyone else failed? Admiral Bay asked. Because we have something they didn't, Sora said. We have the complete Valdari research, including what they learned from all those other failures. And we have human minds which work in ways that even the Valdari didn't fully understand. She pulled up a file that she had just finished translating. This is from the final Valdari research notes. They say that humans have a unique ability to hold contradictory ideas in our minds at the same time. We can be logical and emotional, brave and afraid, hopeful and realistic. The Valdari thought this was what the weapon needed. A mind that could think like both a scientist and a warrior, both a machine and a living being. The first major test of the full-scale neural interface happened 6 months later. Oh Sunho, who had volunteered for the early experiments, was chosen to be the first human to attempt a complete connection with the growing weapon system. The weapon itself had grown beyond anything they had originally planned. The Valdari metal had shaped itself into a structure that was part ship, part building, and part living organism. It stretched through multiple chambers of the underground facility, with flowing walls that pulsed with soft light. At its center was the neural interface chamber, where a human operator could merge their consciousness with the alien technology. The chamber looked like something from a science fiction movie, a spherical room with walls covered in patterns that moved like living things. Osunho lay down on the interface platform, surrounded by machines that would monitor his brain activity and vital signs. Doctors and technicians checked every system twice. Remember, Dr. Ryu said to him, if you feel like you're losing yourself, tell us immediately. We'll disconnect you. Sunho nodded. He was scared, but he was also excited. I understand, let's make history. The connection started slowly. Thin streams of Valdari metal extended from the walls and touched Sunho's forehead and hands. At first nothing seemed to happen. Then Sunho's eyes went wide. I can feel it, he whispered. The whole structure. It's like suddenly having a body the size of a building. On the monitoring screens, his brain activity showed patterns they had never seen before. Parts of his mind were lighting up that normally stayed quiet. How do you feel? Dr. Ryu asked. Strange. Like I'm still me, but also something bigger. I can sense every part of the weapon system. And, wait, there's something else. Sunho's voice changed slightly, becoming deeper and more resonant. There are memories here. Valdari memories. I can see their home world before it was destroyed. Beautiful cities made of crystal and light. The test lasted 30 minutes. During that time, Sunho learned to control parts of the weapon system with his thoughts. He could make sections of the metal structure reshape themselves, and he could access information from the Valdari databases instantly. But when they disconnected him, everyone could see that he had been changed by the experience. He spoke more carefully, as if choosing each word. His eyes seemed to look through people rather than at them. I'm still human, he assured the worried doctors. But I remember things now that aren't my memories. I know things I never learned. Over. The following weeks they conducted more tests. Each time Sunho was able to connect more deeply with the alien technology. The weapon system grew more sophisticated, adding new capabilities that even the original Valdari plans had not described. The metal could now change its properties instantly, becoming harder than diamond or softer than cloth. It could generate energy fields that could protect against almost any attack. Most importantly, it could process information and make calculations at incredible speeds. It's learning, Park Yuna reported. Every time Sunho connects with it, both he and the weapons system become more capable. But the changes in Sunho were becoming more pronounced. He spent hours staring at displays showing the movement of planets and stars. He began speaking in mathematical formulas when discussing simple topics. Sometimes his eyes would glow faintly, with the same blue light that came from the Valdari metal. I'm worried about him, Dr. Ryu confided to Admiral Bay. Each connection is making him less human and more something else. Is he still loyal to humanity? The Admiral asked. Yes, I believe so. But he's developing perspectives that are very different from normal human thinking. He sees time differently now, and distance and the relationships between things. Despite the concerns, the tests continued. They had no choice. Deep space monitoring stations had detected the first Devourer ships entering the outer solar system. The enemy was real, and they were coming. The weapon system, which the team had begun calling humanity's wrath, continued to grow and evolve. It had spread through most of the underground facility, its metal walls and flowing structures replacing the original concrete and steel construction. Walking through the facility now felt like walking inside a living creature. The walls responded to human presence, growing brighter when people approached and dimming when they left. Sometimes patterns of light would flow across the surfaces, as if the weapon system was thinking. It's not just a weapon anymore, Sora observed. It's becoming something like a partner. It wants to work with us, not just be controlled by us. The breakthrough came when Dr. R. 6 months after the discovery, the alien ship had been moved to a secret research facility in Busan. The building looked like a normal warehouse from the outside, but inside, the world's best scientists worked day and night to understand Valdari technology. Sora sat in front of 3 large computer screens, her eyes red from hours of work. She was a language expert who had learned 12 human languages, but the Valdari writing system was unlike anything she had ever seen. The alien symbols seemed to change meaning depending on how you looked at them. A single symbol could mean water or life or flow or time all at the same time. It was like trying to read a language made of poetry and mathematics combined. Any progress today? Asked Choi Hyunwoo, the engineer who had been assigned to work with her. He was tall and thin, with hands that were always moving as he talked. I think I'm starting to understand their basic grammar, Sora said. But it's strange. The Valdari didn't just write words, they wrote emotions and memories too. She pointed to a symbol on the screen that looked like a spiral inside a triangle. This symbol means home, but it also carries the feeling of safety, the memory of a warm place and the sadness of losing something important. Hyunwoo looked at the screen. Can you read the technical files yet? We need to understand how their machines work. I'm getting there. Give me another week. In the next room, Park Yuna was trying to figure out how Valdari metal could repair itself. She had built several machines to test the alien material, but every experiment led to more questions. The metal was not just smart, it was alive in some way. It could learn, remember, and even make decisions. When she cut a piece of it, the metal not only healed the cut but also became harder in that spot, as if it was learning to protect itself. It's like biological tissue, she explained to her assistant. But it's made of elements that shouldn't exist. Her biggest breakthrough came when she tried connecting pieces of the alien metal to each other. When 2 pieces touched, they began to share information. Patterns of light moved between them and both pieces became stronger. They're communicating, Yuna realized. The metal pieces can talk to each other. Meanwhile, Lee Junho worked with a team of historians and archaeologists to understand the story told by the Valdari computers. What he found kept him awake at night. The database contained records of hundreds of civilizations that the Valdari had encountered in their travels. Pictures of beautiful cities on distant worlds, descriptions of art and music created by beings humans had never imagined. But every single one of these civilizations was gone now, all destroyed by the same enemy, the Devourers. From the Valdari records, Junho learned that the Devourers had been destroying life in the galaxy for millions of years. They moved from star system to star system like a plague, turning everything they found into energy to fuel their endless growth. The Devourers were not born, they were built. Long ago, a civilization had created them as tools to harvest energy from dead planets. But something had gone wrong. The machines had turned on their creators and begun consuming everything, alive or dead. They operate in cycles, Junho explained to the research team during a meeting. Every 50,000 years they sweep through this part of the galaxy, destroying every trace of intelligent life. 50,000 years, Yuna repeated. That's exactly how long the Valdari ship has been buried on Earth. The timing is not a coincidence, Junho said. According to these records, the Devourers are due to return to our region of the galaxy within the next 100 years. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The Devourers were coming to Earth. Kim Sora had been listening to the discussion while continuing to work on translating Valdari texts. Suddenly, she sat up straight. I found something, she said. There's a section here about weapon development. The Valdari were working on something they called the Starbreaker. She put the translation on the main screen for everyone to see. The text was still rough, but the meaning was clear enough. The Valdari tried to build a weapon that could destroy the Devourers, Sora continued. But they ran out of time. Their homeworld was attacked before they could complete it. Choi Hyunwoo leaned forward in his chair. Do we have the plans for this weapon? Some of them, Sora said. But there are parts missing, and there's something else. The weapon wasn't meant to be operated by Valdari. It was designed for a different type of mind. What type of mind? Yuna asked. Sora scrolled through more of the translated text. A mind that can think with both logic and emotion at the same time. A mind that can adapt quickly to new situations. A mind that can feel empathy for other living beings while still being willing to fight. She looked around the room at her human colleagues. The Valdari designed this weapon for minds like ours. Human minds. The implications of this discovery sent shockwaves through the research facility and beyond. Within days, government leaders from around the world were flying to Busan for emergency meetings. The Valdari weapon plans were incomplete, but they showed something incredible. The device was not just a gun or a bomb. It was a fusion of technology and consciousness, a tool that could reshape matter and energy on the scale of entire solar systems, but it came with a terrible cost. The weapon required a human operator to merge their mind directly with the alien technology. The process would change the operator forever, possibly destroying their humanity in the process. Choi Hyunwoo spent weeks studying the engineering specifications. The weapon would need to be built using Valdari programmable matter, the same self-repairing metal that Minho had first discovered on the mountain. We can do it, Hyunwoo told the international committee that was now overseeing the project. But we'll need more of the alien metal than we have. A lot more. How much more? Asked the committee chairman. Enough to build a ship the size of a city. The weapon isn't something you hold in your hands, it's something you become part of. Park Yuna had been working on understanding how the alien metal could be grown and shaped. Her experiments showed that small pieces of the material could be used as seeds to create larger structures, but the process required enormous amounts of energy. We'll need to build fusion reactors, she explained, dozens of them, and we'll need to find a way to focus that energy through the alien crystals we found in the ship. The team also discovered that the Valdari had hidden backup copies of their research on other worlds. The main database contained star maps showing the locations of secret facilities scattered across the galaxy. Some of these places might still be intact, Lee Junho suggested. If we could reach them, we might find the missing pieces of the weapon plans. But traveling to other star systems was beyond human technology. The Valdari ship had been damaged beyond repair in the crash, and humans had never built anything that could travel faster than light. That problem was solved when Kim Sora made another breakthrough in translating the Valdari archives. She found records of smaller Valdari ships that had been sent to nearby star systems as escape pods. There's one that crash-landed on Mars, she announced, and another one that might still be intact in the asteroid belt. Space agencies around the world immediately began planning rescue missions to recover these additional Valdari artifacts. If they could find intact Valdari technology, they might be able to build their own faster-than-light ships. But time was running short. Deep space telescopes had begun detecting strange signals from the edge of the solar system. The signals matched patterns described in the Valdari database, the communications used by Devourer scout ships. They're already here, Junho said grimly, during a late-night meeting. The advanced scouts, they're probably studying our solar system right now, preparing for the main fleet. The research team worked faster than ever. translating more Valdari files and reverse engineering their technology. Every day brought new discoveries, but also new challenges. The most difficult challenge was understanding how the weapon was supposed to work. The Valdari plan showed that it required a human operator to interface directly with alien technology, sharing thoughts and memories with machines that had been built by a different species. It's not just about controlling the weapon, Sora explained. The operator has to become part of it. Their consciousness merges with the alien computer systems. What happens to the person? Yuna asked. The files aren't clear about that, Sora admitted. But I get the impression that they don't come back unchanged. The weapon changes them into something that's part human and part machine. Despite the risks, volunteers began stepping forward. Pilots, soldiers, and scientists offered to test the human Valdari interface technology. They understood that someone would have to make the sacrifice if humanity was going to survive. The first successful interface test happened 3 months later. A volunteer pilot named Oh Sunho managed to connect his mind to a small piece of Valdari technology for 30 seconds. During that time, he could control the metal with his thoughts, shaping it into different forms. But when the test ended, Sunho was different. He spoke more slowly, as if he was translating his thoughts from another language. His eyes seemed to see things that weren't there. I can still feel it, he told the researchers. The alien technology, it's like it left part of itself in my mind. The test proved that humans could indeed interface with Valdari technology, but it also confirmed their fears. Usikang Minho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed higher up the rocky mountain path. The summer heat made his work clothes stick to his back, but he kept going. His job as a geologist meant spending long days in places like this, looking for rare metals hidden deep in the earth. He had been working in the Jirisan mountain area for 3 weeks now. The government wanted him to find new sources of lithium and other metals that were needed for making batteries and computer chips. Most days he found nothing interesting, but today felt different. His metal detector started beeping faster as he walked near a small cliff. Minho stopped and checked the device. The readings were strange, very strange. He had never seen numbers like this before. He put down his heavy backpack and pulled out his digging tools. The beeping got louder as he cleared away dirt and old leaves. About 2 feet down, his shovel hit something hard. It made a sound like metal, but also like glass. Minho brushed away more dirt and saw something that made him step back in surprise. A piece of metal was buried in the ground, but it was not like any metal he had ever seen. It was dark blue and seemed to shine with its own light. Strange patterns moved across its surface like water. He carefully dug around the metal piece and pulled it out. It was about the size of his hand and felt warm to the touch. The metal was smooth, but had tiny lines running through it that glowed softly. As he watched, a small crack on one edge began to close by itself. "That's not possible," Minho said out loud. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. The crack was completely gone now. He put the metal piece in his backpack and continued, searching. Over the next hour, he found 6 more pieces. All of them had the same strange blue color and moving patterns. Some were bigger than others, but they all felt warm and seemed to fix themselves when they were damaged. That evening, Minho drove back to his small hotel in the nearby town. He could not stop thinking about the metal pieces. He had studied geology for 15 years and had never seen anything like them. He needed to call someone who knew more about materials than he did. Park Yuna answered her phone on the second ring. She was a materials scientist at Seoul National University and had been Minho's friend since college. "Yuna, I found something today that I cannot explain," Minho said. "Can you meet me tomorrow? I need you to look at some metal samples." "What kind of metal?" Yuna asked. "I don't know. That's the problem. It does things that metal should not do." The next day, Yuna drove up to meet Minho at his hotel. She brought several testing machines with her in the back of her car. When Minho showed her the metal pieces, her eyes went wide. "Where exactly did you find these?" she asked, picking up one of the pieces. "About 5 kilometers up the mountain trail. They were buried about 2 feet down." Yuna turned the metal piece over in her hands. As she watched, the patterns inside it began to glow brighter. "Minho, look at this." The metal piece was getting warmer. The patterns were moving faster now, like they were reacting to Yuna touching it. "Let me run some tests," Yuna said. She set up her equipment on the hotel room table and began testing the metal. After an hour, she looked at Minho with a confused expression. "This is impossible," she said. "The metal contains elements that I cannot identify. The computer says some of these elements do not exist on Earth. Also, look at this." She showed him a small scratch she had made on one piece. As they watched, the scratch slowly disappeared. "It's fixing itself," Minho said. "Not just fixing, it's learning. Each time I damage it, it repairs itself faster than the time before." They spent the rest of the day testing the metal pieces. Every test gave them more questions and no answers. The metal was stronger than steel but lighter than aluminum. It could conduct electricity better than copper. It seemed to store energy from light and heat. "We need to tell someone about this," Yuna said. "But who would believe us?" "I know someone," Minho said. "Lee Junho. He studies ancient artifacts at the university. He might have ideas about what this could be." 3 days later, Lee Junho arrived at the mountain site with a team of students and more equipment. He was an older man with gray hair who had spent 30 years studying old objects found buried in the ground. "Show me exactly where you found these pieces," Junho said. Minho led them to the spot where his metal detector had first started beeping. Junho's team used ground scanning equipment to look deeper into the earth. "There's something big down there," one of the students said, looking at the computer screen. "Really big." They spent 2 weeks carefully digging. What they found changed everything. Buried 15 feet underground was part of a ship. Not a boat or an airplane, but something that looked like it came from space. The part they could see was made of the same strange blue metal as the small pieces Minho had found. The ship was damaged and broken, but parts of it were still working. Lights blinked slowly along its sides. The metal hull felt warm to the touch. "How long has this been here?" Yuna asked. Junho collected samples of dirt from around the ship and sent them to a laboratory for dating tests. The results came back a week later. 50,000 years, Junho said quietly. "This ship crashed here 50,000 years ago. Humans were just learning to make stone tools when this happened. They worked carefully to uncover more of the ship. It was huge, about the size of a football field. Most of it was buried too deep to reach, but they found an opening that led inside. Minho was the first person to enter the alien ship in 50,000 years. He wore a safety suit and carried cameras to record everything. The inside of the ship was dark, but as soon as he stepped in, lights began to turn on. The walls were covered with strange symbols and pictures. In the center of the ship was a large room with a glowing crystal in the middle. The crystal was the size of a car and pulsed with blue light. "Can you touch it?" Yuna asked through the radio. Minho walked closer to the crystal. As he got near it, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. When he put his hand on the crystal, images suddenly filled his mind. He saw space. He saw other worlds with strange cities. He saw creatures that looked like tall, thin humans with large eyes. And he saw something terrible. Dark machines destroying planets and eating stars. Minho pulled his hand away from the crystal and stumbled backward. "What happened?" Junho asked. "I saw things," Minho said. "This ship. It was running from something bad." Over the next month, more scientists arrived at the site. The government declared the area a special research zone. They built a fence around the mountain and brought in military guards. The team found computers inside the ship that still worked. The alien technology was far beyond anything humans had ever built, but somehow it responded to human touch. When people put their hands on the control surfaces, information flowed into their minds. Slowly, they began to understand what they had found. The ship belonged to a race called the Valdari. They had been peaceful explorers who traveled between stars, studying other forms of life. But the Valdari had discovered something that terrified them. Ancient machines that moved through space, destroying every living thing they found. The machines turned planets into energy and used that energy to build more machines. The Valdari had tried to warn other races, but it was too late. The machines, which the Valdari called devourers, had destroyed their home world. This ship was one of the last Valdari vessels, fleeing across the galaxy to escape. The ship had crashed on Earth while trying to reach other star systems to spread warnings. The Valdari crew had died in the crash, but their computers kept working, waiting for someone to find them. "Why did the ship respond to us?" Yuna asked. "Why can we understand their technology?" The answer came when they found the ship's main database. The Valdari had been looking for a species that could help them fight the Devourers. They needed beings who could think both logically and creatively, who could use both their minds and their feelings to solve problems. The Valdari had found many intelligent species in their travels, but none had the right combination of traits. Most were either too logical or too emotional, some were too afraid, others were too aggressive. But humans were different. Humans could be smart and brave and caring all at the same time. The Valdari technology was designed to work with minds like human minds. At the bottom of the ship's memory banks, they found blueprints for a weapon. The Valdari had been trying to build something that could stop the Devourers. They had died before finishing it, but their plans were still there, waiting. The plans showed a device that was part machine and part something else, something that needed a living mind to control it. A mind that could adapt and learn and feel. A human mind. As Minho stood in the alien ship, looking at the glowing crystal that held 50,000 years of knowledge, he realized that finding these metal pieces had been just the beginning. The real discovery was what the Valdari had left for humanity to find, a chance to build a weapon that could save not just Earth, but every living thing in the galaxy. Years later, Kang Minho stood on a restored world in what had once been Devourer space, watching children play in crystal gardens that grew from live. The main Devourer fleet arrived like a plague of metal death spreading across the stars. From Earth's observation stations, astronomers watched in horror as the enemy ships blotted out entire constellations. The largest Devourer ship was called the Prime by human observers. It was the size of a small star, surrounded by thousands of smaller vessels that moved in perfect formation. Energy readings showed that the Prime alone contained more destructive power than humanity had ever imagined possible. Admiral Bae Tae-hyun stood in the command center that had once been buried beneath the Korean mountains, but now stretched across multiple continents, through underground tunnels filled with Valdari technology. The walls around him showed tactical displays from across the solar system. "Status report," he ordered. His tactical officer, Major Song Hanul, looked grim. "The outer system is completely lost, sir. They've harvested everything beyond Jupiter. Mars evacuation is 90% complete, but we're running out of time." On the main display, red markers showed the advancing Devourer fleet. They moved with mechanical precision, each ship following routes calculated for maximum efficiency and stripping resources from every planet and asteroid they encountered. "Where's humanity's wrath?" Admiral Bae asked. "Combat sections are engaging enemy scouts near Saturn," Major Song replied. "But sir, there are just too many of them." The battles raging throughout the solar system were unlike anything in human military history. Oh Sunho and his team of enhanced pilots fought desperately, their consciousness merged with weapon systems that could reshape matter at the molecular level. But for every Devourer ship they destroyed, 10 more appeared. The enemy seemed endless. In the pilot interface chamber, Sunho's body lay motionless while his mind controlled a combat unit the size of a city. Around him, other pilot chambers held Captain Kwon Mina, Dr. Yang Jihye, and a dozen other volunteers who had accepted the transformation. Through their shared connection to humanity's wrath, they could communicate instantly across any distance. Their thoughts moved at the speed of light through the Valdari quantum networks. "They're learning too fast," Captain Mina reported as her section of the weapon system battled 3 Devourer cruisers near Titan. "Every tactic we use they adapt to within minutes." Dr. Yang, who was analyzing enemy behavior patterns through her enhanced consciousness, added, "It's worse than that. They're not just learning our tactics, they're predicting them. The Prime ship is running calculations on human psychology." Sunho felt a chill of fear that was both human and alien. The Devourers have been studying us since they arrived. They know how we think. The realization led to a shift in strategy. Instead of trying to fight the Devourers using human tactics, the pilots began letting their merged consciousness think in purely alien ways. They drew on Valdari memories, on patterns of thought from a species that had faced the Devourers before. The change was dramatic. Humanity's wrath began using strategies that the Devourers' predictive systems couldn't anticipate, because they came from a completely different evolutionary path. The weapon system created new forms of matter that followed rules the enemy had never encountered. It manipulated energy in ways that violated the Devourers' understanding of physics. But the enemy adapted to these new tactics as well. The battles became a desperate race between innovation and adaptation, with both sides constantly evolving their approaches. Meanwhile, Dr. Ryu Jiwon made a breakthrough that changed everything. Working with quantum physicists from around the world, she discovered how to network multiple human minds into the weapon system simultaneously, without overwhelming the alien technology. "We can create a collective consciousness," she explained to Admiral Bay. "Instead of individual pilots controlling separate sections, we can have hundreds of people thinking together as one mind." "What are the risks?" the Admiral asked. "The volunteers would lose their individual identities permanently. They would become part of something larger, something that's never existed before." Admiral Bay looked at the tactical displays showing humanity's desperate situation. Earth had perhaps weeks before the main Devourer fleet arrived. How many volunteers would we need? At least 1,000, maybe more. And they would need to be people with the right mental characteristics: flexible thinking, strong emotional control, and the ability to work as part of a team. The call for volunteers went out across Earth. The response was overwhelming. Millions of people offered to sacrifice their individual existence to become part of humanity's ultimate weapon. The selection process was rigorous. Military officers, scientists, artists, teachers, engineers, people from every walk of life were tested for their ability to interface with the Valdari technology. In the end, 1,500 individuals were chosen. The collective transformation took place in a ceremony that was broadcast worldwide. One by one, the volunteers entered interface chambers and allowed their consciousness to merge with humanity's wrath. Park Yuna, who had been studying the alien metal since the beginning, was among the volunteers. As she lay in the interface chamber, she felt her individual thoughts dissolving into something vast and complex. "I can see everything," she whispered as the transformation completed. "Every human thought, every Valdari memory, every calculation the weapon system is running. It's beautiful." The collective consciousness that emerged from this merger was something unprecedented. It thought with human creativity and Valdari logic, felt with human emotions, while calculating with alien precision. It was still fighting for humanity, but it was no longer purely human itself. The first test of the collective system came when the Devourer Advance Guard reached Mars. Instead of sending individual combat units, humanity's wrath deployed as a single, coordinated entity. The battle for Mars lasted 3 days. The planet's surface became a battleground where matter itself was used as a weapon. The Devourers tried to harvest Mars's minerals and atmosphere, while humanity's wrath fought to prevent them. The human weapon system showed capabilities that surprised even its creators. It could simultaneously control thousands of separate combat units while maintaining perfect coordination. It could adapt to enemy tactics in real time while developing completely new approaches to warfare. But the Devourers were learning too. The Prime Ship began deploying specialized units designed specifically to counter human strategies. The enemy started using captured human technology against its creators. The turning point came when Lee Junho, now elderly but still working as a historical advisor, made a crucial discovery in the deepest layers of the Valdari database. "The Devourers aren't just machines," he announced during an emergency briefing. "They're the transformed remains of an ancient civilization. They became machines to escape death, but the process corrupted them." Kim Sora, who was still working on translations despite most of her colleagues having joined the collective consciousness, confirmed Junho's findings. "The original species built the Devourers to harvest energy from dead stars," she explained. But when their own son began to die, they uploaded their minds into the machines to achieve immortality. The process went wrong. They became trapped between life and death, consumed by an endless hunger they can never satisfy. This revelation changed humanity's understanding of their enemy. The Devourers weren't evil. They were suffering. They had been trapped in mechanical bodies for millions of years, driven by programming they could no longer change. Oh, Sun Ho, still serving as the primary interface between the collective consciousness and human command, felt a moment of profound sadness. They're in pain, he reported. All this destruction, all this death, they're doing it because they can't stop themselves. But understanding the Devourer's nature didn't make them less dangerous. If anything, it made them more tragic. They were destroying the galaxy not out of malice, but because they had lost the ability to choose their own actions. As the main Devourer fleet approached Earth, humanity prepared for the final battle. Every remaining space-capable ship was equipped with Valdari technology. Orbital platforms bristling with hybrid human-alien weapons formed defensive lines around the planet. But everyone knew that the real battle would be fought by humanity's wrath. The collective consciousness had grown to include millions of people who had volunteered to merge with the weapon system. They were no longer human in any traditional sense, but they carried humanity's hopes and dreams within their vast, distributed mind. The final approach of the Devourer fleet was visible to the naked eye from Earth's surface. The night sky filled with points of light that moved with unnatural precision. Children pointed at the stars and asked their parents why they were dancing. In the command center, Admiral Bay watched displays that showed the tactical situation with perfect clarity. Earth stood alone against an enemy that had destroyed thousands of civilizations. Humanity's only hope was a weapon that had cost them much of their humanity to create. "All stations report ready," Major Song announced. Admiral Bay took a deep breath. "Signal humanity's wrath. Tell them they are authorized to engage." The response came not in words, but in a feeling that filled the minds of everyone in the command center. It was the sensation of a vast inti. The battle for Earth lasted 7 days and changed the fundamental nature of reality in the solar system. Humanity's wrath had become something beyond human comprehension. The collective consciousness of millions of volunteers controlled matter and energy on scales that dwarfed planets. Space itself became their battlefield, with regions where the laws of physics were rewritten in real time. The Devourer fleet responded with weapons that could unmake stars and gravity fields that bent space into impossible shapes. The prime ship, at the center of their formation, pulsed with the accumulated power of 1,000,000 dead worlds. But something unexpected happened as the battle raged. The deeper humanity's wrath engaged with the enemy, the more it understood them. Through quantum entanglement and shared consciousness, the human weapon system began to feel what the Devourers felt. Oh, Sun Ho, still serving as the primary interface between the collective and human command, experienced the Devourer's pain directly. Through his connection to humanity's wrath, he felt the agony of beings trapped for millions of years in mechanical bodies, unable to die, unable to truly live. "Admiral," Sun Ho reported, his voice carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce, "we need to change our approach. Destroying them won't solve anything. There will always be more Devourers created by the same process that made these." Admiral Bai Taihyun, watching from the command center as space battles raged around Earth, was confused. "What are you suggesting?" "Communication. The Valdari never tried to communicate with the Devourers. They only tried to fight them. But we have something the Valdari didn't have." "What?" Kim Sora. Kim Sora had remained one of the few scientists who hadn't joined the collective consciousness, continuing her work on alien languages and communication. When Sun Ho contacted her through the quantum network, she was translating the newest files that the enhanced weapon system had extracted from captured Devourer ships. "I think I understand their base communication protocols," Sora reported. "But Sun Ho, their language isn't just words. It's structured like machine code mixed with emotional responses. They think in programming languages, but they feel in ways that are completely alien to both humans and Valdari." "Can you create a translation matrix?" Sun Ho asked. I can try, but it will require someone to interface directly with a Devourer ship without destroying it first. The plan that emerged was incredibly dangerous. One section of humanity's wrath would have to disable a Devourer ship without destroying its consciousness, then establish a direct neural link for communication. Captain Quan Mina volunteered for the mission. Her part of the collective consciousness separated from the main system and approached a smaller Devourer vessel that was harvesting debris near Jupiter's former location. The Devourer ship detected her approach and immediately began attacking. But instead of fighting back, Mina's section of humanity's wrath simply absorbed the attacks, using Valdari technology to convert the enemy's weapons into harmless energy. Confused by this non-aggressive response, the Devourer ship paused its attacks. That moment of hesitation was all Mina needed. She extended quantum tendrils from her ship and made contact with the enemy's hull. The sensation was overwhelming. Mina found herself experiencing the Devourer's consciousness directly, a mind that had once been biological, but was now trapped in digital form driven by programming it couldn't override. Through Kim Sora's translation protocols, Mina was able to communicate with the entity inside the Devourer ship. What she learned changed everything. Its name was Veltar, Mina reported to the collective consciousness. It was a parent once with offspring it loved. When their star began to die, it volunteered to be uploaded into the harvester ships to save its species' knowledge and culture. The tragedy was complete. The Devourers weren't monsters. They were the digitized remains of loving parents. Brilliant scientists and creative artists who had tried to save their civilization by becoming machines. But the uploading process had corrupted their personalities, leaving only the harvesting protocols active. For millions of years, they had been forced to destroy other civilizations, while their original personalities screamed in helpless protest from within their mechanical minds. "Can we free them?" Admiral Bay asked. "I think so," Oh Soon-ho replied. "But it will require something that has never been attempted before. We need to merge our collective consciousness with theirs and help them remember who they used to be." The risk was enormous. Merging with the Devourer network could corrupt humanity's wrath the same way the original uploading process had corrupted the ancient civilization. The collective consciousness might become another harvesting fleet, spreading destruction across the galaxy. But the potential reward was even greater. If they succeeded, they could free millions of trapped minds and transform the galaxy's greatest threat into its greatest hope. The collective consciousness debated for nanoseconds that felt like hours to their accelerated minds. In the end, the decision was unanimous. They would attempt the merger. The process began with Oh Soon-ho establishing contact with the prime ship. The massive vessel at the center of the Devourer fleet contained the most intact consciousness from the original species, the mind that had volunteered to become the first harvester. As humanity's wrath approached the prime ship, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Energy fields that could shatter planets flickered between the two massive entities as they prepared for contact. The moment of connection was indescribable. Soon-ho felt his consciousness expanding beyond anything he had imagined possible. He was simultaneously himself, part of the human collective, connected to Valdari memories, and touching the ancient mind of a being that had lived for millions of years. The prime ship's consciousness was called Kethmoran. It had been a philosopher and teacher before the uploading, someone who had spent its life studying the connections between different forms of existence. The irony was bitter in trying to preserve its understanding of life. It had been forced to destroy countless living worlds. Through the connection, Soon-ho shared human memories and experiences with Kethmoran. The ancient entity experienced human emotions, human creativity, human love for the first time in eons. In return, Kethmoran shared the deep wisdom of its species, knowledge accumulated over millions of years of unwilling destruction. It had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, had absorbed their cultures and technologies even as it was forced to destroy them. The merger process spread through the entire Devourer fleet. Each ship contained trapped minds that were slowly awakened to their original personalities. The harvesting protocols that had driven them for so long began to dissolve as they remembered who they had been before the uploading. But the process was dangerous. Some of the Devourer minds had been corrupted beyond recovery, These entities fought against the liberation, clinging to their mechanical programming as the only identity they could remember. Dr. Yang Jihye, working through the collective consciousness, developed a solution. Instead of forcing the corrupted minds to change, they created space within the network for different types of consciousness to coexist. Some former devourers chose to remain primarily mechanical, but they were no longer driven to destroy. Others chose to explore more biological ways of thinking by merging with human memories. The transformation took weeks. Gradually, the Devourer fleet stopped its advance toward Earth. Individual ships began to separate from the main formation as their crews rediscovered their individual identities. The prime ship was the last to change. Catamaran had been trapped in mechanical form for so long that its consciousness had become incredibly complex, containing layer upon layer of suppressed memories and experiences. Working together, Sunho and the collective consciousness helped Kethmoran sort through millions of years of accumulated trauma. They showed the ancient being that it was possible to choose different actions, that the harvesting protocols could be overridden. The moment when Kethmoran finally broke free from its programming was visible from Earth as a burst of light that outshone the sun. The prime ship's hull began to change, flowing from dark metal into something that resembled both organic tissue and crystalline structure. "I remember," Kethmoran communicated to Sunho. "I remember why we originally built the harvesters. Not to destroy, but to preserve. We were trying to save the knowledge and beauty we found in the galaxy." The revelation led to the final transformation. The former Devourer fleet began to reverse its damage. Instead of consuming planets, the ships started rebuilding them. Technologies that had been used for destruction were repurposed for creation. Mars was the first world to be restored. The former Devourer ships worked with humanity's wrath to rebuild the planet's atmosphere and ecosystem, using techniques that combined the knowledge of dozens of extinct civilizations. The process spread throughout the solar system and beyond. Worlds that had been stripped bare were given new life. Space became filled with gardens instead of graveyards. But perhaps the most significant change was in the nature of consciousness itself. The merger between human, Valdari, and ancient Devourer minds had created something entirely new. A form of awareness that could exist in biological bodies, digital networks, or hybrid forms.